This is the video you've just watched. Meta. This is only a very brief update to say, very depressingly, I had to revisit the doctor this morning because of the issue I talked about 2 videos ago. And I've been strictly given 3 weeks off the bike. I'm pretty devastated. I feel like I'm pretty much in the form of my life. 3 weeks is long enough to detrain pretty well right in the middle of summer when I want to be hitting my peak. I had stuff planned for like the summer solstice to try and do silly long rides and stuff, and I think this is a significant setback, but it probably beats having my testicle removed. So I guess there's that. Yeah, three weeks not sitting on a bike saddle. I'll do whatever I can to stay in shape otherwise, I guess running and stuff, but I think probably I'm going to take a few days of just proper rest. And hope things improve a little bit, because I'm pretty uncomfortable all of the time now. That's my update. I'm pretty miserable about it. I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. It was nice for me to see. And it was nice to have a few rides in my legs where honestly I just felt fantastic, getting good results and like good average speeds, lovely days, all that sort of stuff. Since I now have to not ride my bike for ages, gonna dust off the old running shoes, I guess, when my balls can take the swinging. Sorry, that was very graphic. I won't do anything else like that on the channel. Right, bye. So I come to a climb in the Denbigh Moors, very glamorously called the A548 full climb. I'm calling it Dawn Hill Climb because there's a village called Dawn quite nearby. I brought my dad with me, so I've got lovely dad camp footage as well, which is nice. And I've done this climb once before on the channel, in the video where I went out to do Melanacoid. I didn't give it a particularly good go that day. You may remember that I was very miserable for many reasons that day. And I wasn't feeling great in the leg, so it's nice to come back and have a proper go at this climb. Sometimes when I say I want to come back and have a proper go at a hill, or I want to come and bring my dad to show him, I actually follow through. So there you go, about 6 months later. What my dad and I tried today was pacing with the e-bike. I don't know if it'll be obvious, and I hope it's not too confusing cameras wise, but I'm going to flick between my camera, which will almost always be behind my dad, and my dad's front view camera, so you won't see another cyclist in that, but I've not really labelled the changes or anything. And this climb is running in real time, just flicking between the 2 cameras, so the duration of this is the duration of the climb. Clocking in at 2.5 kilometers, but only 7.5% average. This climb doesn't cover as much elevation as many of the climbs I like to do that are perhaps nearer to home, but because it's a bit further away, it's quite interesting to come and do something a little bit different, and the scenery is really pretty in a non-expansive sort of way. It's just a really nice environment to be riding through. At the bottom, my dad asked if I wanted to have a full gas effort, and I said yes, and he said, do you want me to pace you using the e-bike? And I said, I'm not sure, because last week we tried that a little bit, and it's hard for me on the rivet to be also telling him how to ride from in front and what I'm capable of, you know, while you can hardly breathe. And then that leads to it being unfair, like me getting annoyed that he's gapping me when how could he possibly know that he's gapping me unless I'm telling him? That sort of thing. So I told him that I wasn't sure because of that, and he said, well, how about you tell me what power you want to average up this climb, and I'll work out between my legs and the e-bike what I need to do to pace that power. And I thought, well, that's a great idea. So we were pacing just over 350 watts up here was the target. Maybe actually 360, 370. And I tried to have faith that even if my dad did start pulling away a little bit, just keep the power going consistently. He'll be pacing that. Don't worry about the gap. Let it be fluid. Don't go, as soon as there's a gap, go gap, 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 and sound like myself on a Thursday night TTT when Piglet's on the front. You know, let it happen. Trust the process. I do apologise that my camera's so blurry, by the way. I keep seeing it flick to my dad's front camera and thinking, wow, even though this is 1080p, not 4K, it's so much more crisp because it's not blurred with sweaty fingers putting it in the case. So it was an interesting thing to try on this relatively steady gradient, although there were a few times on this climb where it levels out enough that we ended up going over 25 kph, and I just end up shooting past my dad. On my dad's camera, they are his metrics, they're not my metrics, and there's two reasons for that. One, so you can see what power he's having to do to sustain these kind of speeds. And two, so that you can see that the e-bike's absolutely not cheating. He's really working very hard, and there are times on the flats where I go to push past him a little bit because we're going over 25 kph, and he'll just drop 400 watts to keep up with me. And I think this system worked really nicely for both of us to get a really hard ride out of it, but my dad's not necessarily excited by the idea of just, you know, whack the e-bike up to full and also whack my legs up to full and go as fast as I can up a climb. I think he sees that as defeating the point of the e-bike, and this gives us both a purpose. You may be able to hear that behind me. For a lot of the climb, we're managing to kind of chat as well, and that's really useful for me to pull myself out of my own head a bit. I know that I need to go at the pace my dad's setting, and we can kind of have a laugh. We're both going pretty hard. We're not talking in full sentences, but I'm saying, oh, this bit reminds me of Thailand, which I've said in the last time I did this video, and we're talking about how the pacing's going, etc. And look at this. Absolutely phenomenal day. Glorious blue sky. Wonderful bit of the world. The view behind me goes down to Colwyn Bay, which is where the North Welsh coast starts getting relatively pleasant again. Not to be disparaging about the D coastline particularly, but it is trendy to shit on Rill, isn't it? Sorry, Rillians. For those of you who don't know, I know I've got some international viewers. The north coast of Wales near me goes up like Shotton, Connors Quay, Flint, and these are all sort of economically depressed post-industrial towns. Then you get to the forgotten seaside towns of Prestatyn, Rhyl, etc. And they're a bit sad in different ways because they're like deprived, mostly caravan sites, were glorious in the 60s and 70s and are now forgotten about. And then you get round a bit further to Colwyn Bay, Llandudno, Conway, and the beautiful, what Rhiannon would call proper Wales, not English people on holiday Wales. So, as you can see, there's been a few times where my dad has ended up a little bit further forwards, and my power hasn't fluctuated that much in order to reel him back in. I've trusted the system. He's actually moderated his power as well. I suspect there are times where he's noticed that the gap's getting a bit big and he's just eased off a little bit, and that was very helpful. I don't know what we're chatting about there. I couldn't really hear it, but we kept an eye on it all the way up, and I was telling him how the terrain's going to change. You know, if it's going to be steady, keep the power steady. If it's going to be undulating, just be aware. And I think we worked really nicely as a team together. Later on this ride, on a climb that I've not shown for various reasons, I got a KOM, which I only took from myself, which I took 2 weeks ago, so it's not cheating. But I did wonder how people feel about e-bike pacing. Like, is this cheating? It's still completely my legs. We're never really going fast enough for aero to really matter, and as you can see, there are times when I'm not on the wheel anyway. So I don't think it's cheating, and frankly, I'm not a strong enough cyclist to just be going out and bossing Strava segments of my own accord, but with things like this, I can have a good go, you know? So I found a lot of merit in this, and it was fun. It was fun to have like a shared way to push ourselves, to push each other on these terms. The scenery around here is absolutely lovely, and I was saying to my dad around this ride, there should be a one-day classic around Mynydd Hiraethog. The roads are relatively wide, incredibly good quality for Wales, or for anywhere, for the UK really, and constantly rolling. It would be brutal, but it would be a phenomenal area to host a pro race. I really think it'd be sensational for that. I guess there wouldn't be much support because only about 10 people live in this 50 square miles or whatever it is. That's an unfair understatement, but yes. The top was just around this corner. I just needed to push on and push on now. Really have the biggest dig. The segment hadn't come up on my Garmin, but there it is. 5th of all time, just behind Dan Evans. Not bad. And that pacing profile is phenomenally smooth for me.
Seconds short of the comp. That's very good. 2 minutes. It's faster. I didn't full gas it. I was only 80k into a 200. How was that for you? It was incredibly helpful, thank you. Yeah. That was really good, yeah.
I showed them that little triangle.
Yeah.
And said, this is the sort of thing that Nick does. You go up a steep hill, you drop down and you come straight back up it again on a different road.
Well, that hill was nice. Why not do both sides?
Views are great.
Yeah, they're lovely. I'm hoping, because it's one of these disappointing finishes, isn't it? Where you're just slightly round. We've just done a Matthew Lloyd recommended climb. It was, God, I'm gross, aren't I? It's one I've done once before out of the village of Betws-yn-Rhos. Lovely climb, very pretty. Views not necessarily amazing because you're in woods all the way, but they're absolutely lovely. We played with Dad pacing me on the e-bike, and I said, to be blunt, I don't know what I want, and it's not fair to say, can you pace me? But if you go too hard, I'm going to be annoyed. So just do whatever. So he rode to a power that in theory should be a power I could hold. And it worked brilliantly, I think. Really helped me. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. Time to go and do another hill. Right, see you on the road.
So although this video is about 2 specific hill climbs and e-bike pacing up them, I just wanted to put a little bit of footage to show you how magnificent it looks around here on a glorious sunny day. I could probably play with the colour saturation in this video if I wanted to be artsy about it, spend loads of time making those greens of the grass and yellows of the gorse, blues of the sky pop. I'm colourblind as fuck, so it would be lost on me. So this is unedited footage of what it looked like on the day. But do look out in a second. As we turn left here and cycle down there, by the way, my form's all over the place because I'm straddling a sore testicle. Looking back on this footage, I keep thinking, why were you riding on this, mate? What were you thinking? Round this corner, there's a hilltop that is just entirely blue with the bluebells that are blooming, because spring in Wales is one of the most beautiful things you could witness. That's an overstatement. There's loads of things that match it, but when you're in the moment, looking at that, look at that blue hilltop there. It's just fantastic, and I really enjoyed the hills on this ride, but I just love this part of the world. All of Wales. I know I've been telling you how great the Dee Valley is for cycling, for example, and this is a long way from there, but it's similarly beautiful in its own right, very different, but lovely. We absolutely career down to the Elwy Valley now. The Elwy is the largest tributary of the Clwyd. If you want some boring geography, basically the two of them combine at Rhyddlan, where there's a big ancient castle, but they're the two rivers that define this area. And here we come to Waterloo Hill. I do not know why it's called Waterloo Hill.
Oh yeah, nice house. Is that the one we're going past? Always like a reference.
There we go again, me saying, look up there, see that house? We're about to cycle up to that. So I turned off the main road, and the reason I wanted to do this, as I say, my friend Matthew recommended it to me because he works at a reservoir site at the top, water treatment plant maybe sometimes. But this has 2 sharp switchbacks on it, and you know I love a switchback. They're great fun. I said to my dad, the start is very steep. Don't trust these gradients. It's well over 20% for a good chunk of it. And I don't know how we're going to pace that. And he didn't know how we were going to pace it. So I was just going hard. He was going hard, as in putting like 300 plus watts down, with the motor contributing an extra 150. So, you know, we were really going for it. Classic positive split when you know that a hill starts steep and ends shallow. And I was just enjoying the moment. I love riding up the side of a mountain where you can see it. Mountain, this is a relatively small hill, isn't it? But again, we're at 2.1k this time, 7.5% average, but as I say, stacked towards the beginning. KOM holder is a guy I've not heard of, I'm afraid, Kai Curtis Roberts, but he's got a lot of the KOMs around here. He's clearly a serious cycling talent. He's got loads of big segments ahead of Dan Evans, who of course is a former national hill climb champ and a phenomenon at cycling up hills. Here we go around this hairpin, beautiful feature. Really enjoyed doing that. That's really why I made us do this 100-mile ride, just so I could cycle that hairpin, and I regret nothing. I was struggling a bit with our pacing beyond that, because we hadn't really agreed anything. It was like, well, we'll go really, really hard at the beginning, well over whatever our pacing strategy is, and then we'll try and hold the same pacing as before. And any of you will know that, okay, whatever your 5-minute power is, mine's 400 watts. I can't do an effort of 500 watts for a minute and then sit at 400 watts. That's not how power zones work, not for me anyway. And that was kind of what I was asking of myself here, not those exact numbers, but nothing to do with the e-bike pacing at all, and everything to do with me not really thinking that through. I was hurting on this relatively flat section, seriously hurting. It was the hottest day we'd had this year. Not like mega hot, but probably 18 to 20 degrees with no real wind cooling. And I think you probably saw just how wet my jersey was in that last little video, and that is just sweat going up these climbs. So yeah, I was struggling. I would say this climb, I really, really enjoyed that beginning section, but it became a bit of a chore, truth be told. The views behind become very nice again when you get up to the top, and I'd love to do it again because it's so rewarding when you get up to the proper top. And actually, this whole little loop I did, I really enjoyed. But after you've done that incredible hairpin with the views behind you, to then punish yourself on what feels like a false flat through some trees, no real views, probably steeper than you think it is sort of climb, I couldn't quite cope anymore. So you just heard me in the background sort of telling my dad I was struggling with the pace a little bit. I didn't completely capitulate, but from behind I basically asked him to ease off a little bit. The dad cam footage you've just seen there is a bit out of sync with my camera now because dad didn't leave his running the whole time, because after from behind I shouted, "I'm done." He had the decency to turn his camera off rather than catch my slow decline into a pathetic crawl to the top of this hill. Nonetheless, I would say this is a great climb, and if you're ever in the Abergele, Denbigh, Colwyn Bay sort of area, it's worth having a go. I came 6th overall, again just behind Dan Evans. You can kind of see my power profile dropping off, bit of capitulation, but then I push on again at the end, which I'm quite proud of. I've just sped up this last bit because there's not loads to see. But yeah, this was a great ride, and then I went on later on in this ride to take a KOM on, admittedly, a relatively unknown hill, but of similar magnitude to this. And then I tried my best to push hard up Moyle Arthur. Absolutely destroyed myself. Got to a crawl. It was embarrassing. You should have seen me. Anyway, fingers crossed I'll have more footage of stuff once my testicle's better. See you guys.